Hi everyone, this is Anna and welcome back to my channel. In today's video I'm going to show you how to stitch this short dress. Also, link to PDF pattern you can find in description below. For this project I'm gonna be using 100% cotton fabric. So I already cut my details and now let's get started. Take the back panel and yoke. Put yoke on top of the back panel, right side up. Pin it and stitch it together. Trim back half of the seam allowance. Press seam flat. Then fold it and press again. Pin the seam and stitch it so the seam allowance appears inside. Pin 4 pleats at the back and stitch them. Also, pin 2 pleats on each of the front panel and stitch them. It's good to press each seam straight away after stitching, because it will be harder to get to it after all stitched. At the center front, fold 1 cm and then 2 cm. Pin it all the way down and make a stitch on both panels. Place front panel on top of the back panel face side up. Pin the shoulders and stitch. Press shoulder seams flat, then fold it and press again. Pin the seam and stitch it so the seam allowance appears inside. Place sleeve to the armhole face side up. Pin it all the way around and stitch. Trim half of the seam allowance. Press seam flat, then fold it and press again. Stitch sleeve again so the seam allowance appears inside. Stick interfacing to one of each panel, collar and undercollar. Pin together 2 collar details and stitch it. Trim the corners and turn over the collar. Then press it flat. Place collar on top of the undercollar. Pin it to the neckline and stitch. Place another undercollar panel on top of the collar. Pin it and stitch. Turn 1 cm seam allowance on undercollar. Pin it to the neckline and make a stitch. Take cuff panels, fold them in half, pin all the way around, but leave an opening from one side to turn it later. Trim the corners and turn out the cuffs. Then press them flat. Place cuffs on top of the sleeves, pin it and stitch. Take the flap details, fold them in half, pin at both sides and stitch. Turn out the flaps and press them flat. Place the flaps to the front panels, pin it and stitch. Trim half of the seam allowance, turn flap down and stitch on top. Match the side seams and stitch them right side up. On the side seams, trim half of the seam allowance. Turn out the dress and stitch side seams again, so the seam allowance appears inside. Double turn the bottom of the dress and make a stitch. Also double turn the sleeves and make a stitch. On the front closure and cuffs, mark all of the loops placements. My sewing machine has an option to make a half automatic loops, so this is the settings I'm gonna use to make loops. Also, you need to have this special foot. Using a hand needle, sew all of the buttons. Nick all of the loops. And here is the finished product. Let me know guys, how do you like it, and also if you were inspired to make one for yourself, you can find a link to a PDF pattern in the description below this video. Don't forget to like this video and subscribe to my channel to see more projects.